invite Professor Andrei Plesu, Rector of the New Europe College and former Minister of Culture of Romania, former also Minister of the Foreign Affairs, to give us a word of welcome.
Mr. President, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We have been told, and will be told again and again, that you are in which EASR country. You knew that already, even without being told. Romania cannot possibly host a conference on the religious history of Europe and Asia without invoking the patronage of a scholar of EASR's fame and caliber, born in Romania, with a Romanian cultural background, and so bound to the Romanian language that the first version of almost all his books was in Romanian. But let me also tell you something else, something certainly less well known. You are not only in EASR's country of origin, you are also in the country in which for long periods after the last war, EASR was a forbidden author. Several times it was possible to break this embargo, but ideologically speaking, EASR remained an underground author, which didn't always happen in other former communist countries. The ban I refer to was not tied, as maybe you tend to believe, to the extreme right publications imputable to the young EASR. It was simply the inhabitants of the official atheism for the territory of religious studies. The ideologists of the regime had decreed that EASR, besides being a defector, was also guilty of being an obscurantist, an idealist, a reactionary figure. The sphere of religion was condemned on principle, or, in the best case, reduced to a marginal, discrete, ghetto-like subsistence. This species of ideological censorship did not succeed in attenuating the religious life of people, even if it imposed limits and inhibiting precautions. But it succeeded in reducing religious studies to the apologetic basic essentials, to a minimum without any evaluation. With a few spectacular exceptions, the theology of that period developed anemically, and the academic research on the subject, that is the discipline of history of religions, was evacuated from high schools and universities. In the last years of the communist regime, things reached a tragic comical severity. Medieval art albums couldn't appear because images of saints and churches weren't tolerated. All the words of the current religious vocabulary were proscribed. Those who had a vocation tied to the sphere of religions had either to skillfully hide it or to leave the country, as my friend Ioan Petru-Culianu did. I think it is helpful to bear this situation in mind in order to understand the specific position and orientation of the religious studies in post-communist countries. The balance between the believers and the experts shifted towards the former. It seems to me that in Western Europe things evolved the other way around. Religious studies developed against a background of pronounced secularization, and consequently, a certain disjunction, if not a radical incompatibility, appeared between religious experience and academic research. Neutrality, sometimes even a critical distance towards the studied phenomenon, became a guarantee of objectivity and methodological rigor. In other words, we underwent the risk of a type of religious commitment that inhibited the scientific performance, while the Western University underwent the risk of a type of religious indifferentism that inhibited comprehension. At the limit, we can become the victims of a certain species of fundamentalism, while the West tends to adopt the formula of an enlightened atheism, whose propagandistic excesses we, in Eastern Europe, had to face under the communist regime until saturation point was reached. One could say it is high time to meet again, to talk and to correct ourselves through each other. The organizers of this conference are some very young people of the new generation of researchers in the field of religions who succeeded to combine methodological rigor and massive information on the one hand with the capacity to identify with the object of their study on the other. We all owe them our thanks. After a severe surgical intervention, Marshall McLuhan's first words were, "In the intensive care unit, there are no atheists." Well, the countries in Eastern Europe have undergone, after the Second World War, a trauma that is equivalent to a mutilating surgical intervention. And the transition period in which we find ourselves is an enormous intensive care unit in which atheism is rather unconvincing. After all, we survived undignified times not so much through combative courage, but through hope, patience, and faith. So, welcome to our intensive care unit. I'm sure that your presence here will have a rapid healing effect. Thank you.